Hello, this is William Hiley at St. Matthews. Thank you for joining me for this video presentation. The purpose of this presentation is to inform you about the status of our parish's Family Faith Formation program so that we can discern together the future of this program. In this 20-minute presentation, I'll be sharing with you some statistics as well as my interpretation of those statistics and some concrete requests, action items, and questions for you to consider. Now, of course, critical to this process is sharing of ideas on those questions. So as you're thinking about these questions and paying attention to the presentation, please consider sending me some feedback, your thoughts, your ideas. I invite them because they're so important for us moving forward. So you can always get a hold of me at the parish office by giving us a call or sending me an email. With that said, let's begin our presentation. The goals of our Family Faith Formation program are fourfold. Firstly, to connect families with one another and our broader parish community. We also want to help parents and children alike to encounter Christ in a deeper way that inspires deeper conversion and change of heart. We also want to equip parents to be the primary but not sole catechist of their children and to build a supportive community around them to support them as they carry on that role as primary but not sole catechist. Finally, we want to send families out together, parents and children alike, to share the gospel with one another, with others in our community too, in word and in deed. Now, of course, we measure how we're doing on these goals in a number of ways, both qualitative and quantitative. Most of what you're going to see tonight in this presentation are quantitative or numerical evidence of how we're doing towards these goals. We use, as our core program, the A Family of Faith series from Sophia Institute Press. And Sophia Institute recommends 3 different models that we could use to implement this program. Right now, we are using an approach most similar to Model 3, or parallel learning, parallel instruction. In this model, parents attend class at the same time as their children in a separate location to do their learning at an adult level while kids work at a kid level. Then after those lessons, parents have these workbooks from A Family of Faith that allow them to reinforce learning and expand on that at home with their kids in tandem with what's happening in the classroom. So that's what Model 3 looks like, but it's worth noting that this wasn't always the model that we had intended to implement for Family Faith Formation. When I arrived in July 2019, this switch to A Family of Faith was just underway, and we are actually planning to implement something that looked more like Model 1, which is to say a whole family small group approach where we'd have groups of families getting together to do activities, to experience formation, and taking the lead in that way on the program. That's what we had initially planned for. But then, of course, that was fall 2019. Spring 2020, the pandemic happened, and this caused us to pivot in how we planned our ministry. In fall 2020, we started with a parallel monthly instruction model, and that seemed to be going pretty well. So in fall of 2021, we continued with a parallel weekly instruction model. And that's what we've been intending and working on implementing this fall as well, is a weekly parallel instruction model. And I think the fruits are pretty evident here. Since the pandemic, of course, we have grown pretty mightily as a program, especially in our pre and post First Communion classrooms. And this graph shows how that growth breaks down. Green bar represents the number of First Communion children in the program. Blue bar represents the number of pre and post First Communion kids in the program. And then the orange bar represents the total number of families in the program. As you can see, First Communion has gone up and down. The number of families has gone up and down. But the trend line is positive, and pre and post First Communion kiddos, or pre and post First Communion kiddos overall, have continued to rise all 3 years since pandemic, which is a really positive indicator for our program. Just for context, we enroll 147 in-person kids at St. Matthews in this program right now. John Paul II Catholic School, with whom we share spaces, enrolls 187. And one more statistic that I think is a useful gauge of how well our program is doing, this parent-to-family attendance ratio. This is a measurement of the answer to this question. How many parents stay for a class when they bring their kid to class? And the answer is about 63%. Across campus, if a parent brings a child for a pre-K through 5th grade program class, there's a 63% chance that at least one parent will stay for class as well, which is incredible. I haven't seen that pretty much anywhere else I've looked around in our diocese. So I'm wondering what makes our program so. I've given it some thought. And so the remainder of this presentation, then, I want to share with you why I think our program is successful in doing that, as well as some of the threats and weaknesses that are currently at work in our program, limiting its effectiveness and growth. We'll start, of course, with some positive news, looking at some opportunities or environmental factors that are supporting our ministry well. There's three main things that I would draw your attention to here. First, the policy and the decisions and the energy in the diocese overall are moving decisively in favor of family faith formation models similar to ours, and especially beginning to place a priority on quality adult formation activities and models. As more and more parishes throughout the diocese begin to implement models that look like ours, and vary from ours, we're going to learn a lot more about best practices, and we're going to gain a lot more resources within the diocese to execute our program well. So that helps us out a lot. We also, every year, continue to surface new families who have never been involved or haven't been involved in a while in programs. And that's great because these families certainly provide growth potential for our program, but they also are bringing a lot of dynamism, new stories, new ideas to our program. And I think that's great. It adds a lot of vitality to our program. We also have positive knock-on effects from other ministries. In particular, our youth ministry here, 6th through 12th grade, has been strong for a number of years and continues to be. We have a steady Hispanic ministry that organizes a lot of youth and elementary age events on its own. We also have John Paul II Catholic School reaching its highest enrollment in several years. And all of these create a great environment, or a better environment, I should say, for certainly for finding volunteers, for inviting new families, for creating a dynamic and lively community of learners. So all of this works together in our favor. Let's turn now to some of the things that our program does particularly well, and strengths that allow us to do things pretty well. First and foremost among these, and something that I do not want to overlook, is this growing core of returning families. That's what's represented in this graph here on the left. The number of families who return from year to year to our program, regardless of whether or not they have a sacrament in their family that year, continues to grow. And this is important because this is not just a fruit of our ministry, but an asset to it. These families who stay are those who help attract and invite other families to stay. They bring experience to our parent community, and they ultimately help us to build, again, that diverse and interested community of learners who makes our formation experience lively and dynamic. So, kudos and thank you for everyone who returns from year to year to keep investing in this program. We also have a stable and experienced team of First Communion volunteers, especially every volunteer who is on our First Communion team presently has been involved in formation in the past, and they're using a tried and true curriculum that is very easy and effective for them to implement. But it seems to be so, and it seems to be working based on the fruits. So great job, First Communion team. We also, of course, have me as a full-time staff minister who spends about 66% of his time on this particular program. And over the past 2 years of pandemic experience, we've gained a lot of practice and insight into data management. We've begun investing in new communication tools, and we've, again, earned some experience in using hybrid or digital media for facilitating our faith formation program. And we've learned how to use our curriculum in that kind of setting. So let's turn then to some of the things that threaten our program presently, or risks, things that are impairing our growth and performance at this time. Let's start with the external things, the things a little bit beyond our control. First thing that I'm aware of that is worth noting is that the whole diocese is beginning to shift towards a 2-year confirmation process that would span both 7th and 8th grade for children or confirmandi youth preparing to receive the sacrament of confirmation. We don't know entirely how this is going to shake out yet, but I am aware that this could create additional conflicting commitments for parents and volunteers depending on how this shakes out. So we'll want to keep a close watch on how this confirmation program transition happens. Another major thing that we don't have total control over, but that definitely impacts how we minister, is classroom availability. Right now, the rooms that we work with are volunteered to us by John Paul II Catholic school teachers. And we don't have too many spaces that we're operating in right now. We accommodate 147 total pre-K through fifth graders in 6 classrooms, whereas John Paul II, again, they have 187 enrolled across 14 classrooms. Moreover, the layout and the age distribution of kids in our programs between JP2 and Family Faith are not quite the same. As you can see from these graphs, John Paul II's age distribution favors littler kids, and so more of their classroom spaces are set up for little kids. In contrast, Family Faith formation tends to have its median age somewhere in the 2nd to 3rd grade range. As a result, we have bigger kids on average using classrooms that are set up oftentimes for different kiddos, for smaller kids, right? And so we have to bend and work and flex around how and get creative with how we utilize our spaces to make sure that they work well for our classrooms. Finally, now let's look at some of the vulnerabilities in our program or areas where our program is particularly prone to difficulty. One area that is especially on my brain on a regular basis is the limited number of volunteers we have, not in the team as a whole, but in our pre and post First Communion areas and the subs that go along with this. Again, our First Communion team has a lot of volunteers and they're all doing great. We have several great volunteers in our pre and post First Communion classes too. There's just not a lot of them. And that's what this graphic here on the left shows. It shows how the number of volunteers we need to maintain a good ratio of children to adults in the classroom, how that margin is disappearing in our pre and post First Communion teams. The number of volunteers we need continues to increase as we experience rapid growth. 2 years ago, 4 last year, we need 6 volunteers to maintain a good ratio this year. But the volunteer team in this particular area is not growing to meet that particularly quickly enough. And, I don't think this is, just because people don't want to volunteer. I think at least part of this is because parallel instruction does not facilitate having parents and family members as regular classroom ministers, because we create conflicting commitments for them. Given the choice, of course, a lot of our parents face the choice between attending a peer-like class where they can learn with other adults and receive instruction that many find, at least to some degree, enjoyable. And they face the choice between that and helping out in kids' classrooms. And honestly, it's a reasonable thing to say. 8 times out of 10, I would probably choose to sit in a parent class the same. And so this parallel instruction design does not lend itself towards having a large group of people who we would like to have as ministers ministering. Moreover, a Family of Faith as a curriculum does not have a pre-built lesson plan for these ages in the same way that our First Communion curriculum does. As a result, I, who don't have a degree in elementary education, assemble lesson plans. It takes about 8 hours a month to build 9 lesson plans for these different classrooms and to share them with the teachers. And they vary in how easy they are to implement, how well communicated they are. I guarantee I do my darn best. It's just, not my particular area of expertise. And as a result, volunteers in this particular area face some variables in their ministry that make it a little bit more difficult to minister. All of this is not to sound doom and gloom, but I think it looks to me like there are some systematic issues here, and those systematic issues bring us to our present dilemma. Our ministry is reaping a lot of positive fruits, especially in terms of enrollment numbers from previous years of good ministry. However, there's little margin in our ministry team to continue supporting a parallel instruction format in our non-First Communion classes, and this has knock-on effects that can risk destabilizing the ministry as a whole. In the short term, like immediately right now, we are facing classroom location uncertainties because we have a lot of kiddos and very few volunteers, and so finding a classroom that's sized appropriately to work with them is a bit difficult. We also, of course, therefore have large class sizes. Large class sizes are difficult for a few volunteers to maintain, and so volunteer burnout is a very real risk. And with that, when it's difficult to find volunteers, and that happens due to one thing or another that we can't find volunteers to cover classes on a given night, that can lead to partial class cancellations or total cancellation of programs on a given night. We're running into those risks right now, and I'm not all doom and gloom about this. I think this just means that we're reaching an inflection point for our ministry model. I think this means that we've taken our parallel instruction model almost as far as it can go. And so we're here at this point. In the short term, in order to maintain our current model, our parallel instruction right now format, we need to repurpose and recruit 5 additional ministers, 3 as regulars, 2 as subs, to maintain our current format. And we need to add some classroom spaces. We can work on that. But in the long term, if we want to make sure that our program continues remaining sustainable and scalable, to seize on the growth potential that is in our program and in our parish, I think we really need to begin considering revising our model to look a bit differently. Like I said, we're running in Model 3 right now, parallel instruction, but the original intent was to do something more whole family, small group focused. We can, of course, blend these ideas and put it together in a unique and novel way. And that's the reason why I'm here making this presentation to you today. I've been informing everyone, our pastor, our staff, our parish council, of this present position of family faith formation. I've spoken with volunteer ministers about it, and now I'm talking with you, the families, the stakeholders in our program. From here, I would like to begin assembling a team to consider what the future of family faith formation can be, to develop some ideas for short terms, and to flesh out the vision for the long term and seeing what this new model of faith formation could be for us. We have ideas, we have some different thoughts, but your feedback and your experience is incredibly valuable in this area. To hear many different diverse voices would no doubt be to the benefit of our program. So concretely then, here's the ask. I'm looking for 5 more volunteers right now to maintain our program operating smoothly in the short term. I'm also looking for individuals who would be willing to help me through some Zoom meetings in the month of November and December, put together and address specific proposals for the future of family faith formation. Again, to get a diverse position or diverse population weighing in on these issues so that we can build something good in the future. But most of all, of course, right now, whether you can do the volunteering, whether you can be on the vision team, whether or not those things, I'm looking for your input. What can we do to make this ministry meaningful and sustainable for the families of our parish? I'm confident that together we can build something that helps families find strength in the gospel. I'm confident that we can build a program that is more accessible to volunteers, that helps families serve together and is sustainable and scalable through future growth. But in order to do this, I need you. I need your story. I need your experience, because this ministry exists only insofar as we do it together. So let's share stories. Let's share ideas, struggles, hopes, and dreams, all those things. Because I do believe that working together, we can make this program better than it's ever been. The potential is there. The call is here. I know we can do it together. So let's get to work. I invite your feedback. I invite your ideas. Please, please don't let this just be a dead presentation. Please send me your emails, your phone calls with ideas, thoughts, what we can do to secure the future of our program, to build a better community. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have a blessed day.